What if one of God's most important promises was fulfilled through a woman almost no one remembers? Most people believe they know how great divine promises are completed. Scripture tells a different story. There is a covenant in ancient Scripture that almost no one speaks about, a union so quietly recorded that most readers pass over it without a second glance. Yet this forgotten relationship reshaped generations, redirected nations, and fulfilled a divine word that still echoes today. Have you ever wondered how Elion of Harad, remembered as the builder of altars and the father of a chosen lineage, truly completed the promise spoken over his life? Because the answer may challenge everything you thought you knew about how God finishes his promises. The answer lies in a woman few have ever heard of. Her name was Maresa. Her story is not shouted from the pages of Scripture. It is whispered. But her legacy still breathes through history. Elion and Maresa entered into a covenant that history nearly erased, a bond that gave birth to peoples, forged destinies, and fulfilled prophecies long after the main story seemed finished. But why has this covenant remained hidden? Why would such an influential chapter be reduced to silence? And what mystery lies beneath this union that so few have ever explored? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll discover a connection between Maresa's legacy and our world today, one that may completely change how you see the forgotten chapters of your own life. This is the story of Maresa, the overlooked partner in Elion's destiny. Imagine realizing that one of the most consequential stories in sacred history was always there quietly, waiting, yet you had never noticed it. That is exactly what happens with the covenant between Elion and Maresa. When people speak of Elion, they remember Talira, his first companion. They remember the long years of waiting, the promise spoken beneath the night sky, and the miraculous birth of Neriel, the child of inheritance. But what happened after Talira's passing? What unfolded when the patriarch's most celebrated chapter had already closed? Because this is where most people stop reading, right where the most unexpected chapter begins. The answer rests in a brief passage from the Chronicles of the East. Just a few lines. Yet those lines reveal a truth far greater than they appear. Talira departed this life during the 143rd year of Elion's journey. The tents of Harad fell silent as mourning filled the valley. Elion was now 139 years old. To many, his story was complete. But heaven was not finished. It was at this moment, when endings seemed final, that a new beginning quietly entered his life through a woman named Maresa. The text records it simply. Elion entered into covenant with Maresa. No explanation, no ceremony described, no fanfare. Yet nothing in sacred history is accidental. When everyone assumed the story had ended, heaven quietly introduced the person who would multiply it. The name Maresa means fragrance released at dusk, like incense rising when daylight fades. Her presence marked a season most believed had already passed. Scholars debate her origins. Some believe she came from the highlands beyond Kadesh. Others suggest she descended from desert clans east of the Great Salt Sea. What we know for certain is this: she was chosen for a purpose far greater than companionship. Elion did not know it yet, but through Maresa, the divine word spoken decades earlier would reach its fullest expression. Here lies the first great mystery. How could a woman mentioned so briefly become the mother of peoples who would influence centuries? The answer reveals something profound about divine design. Elion's life included 3 pivotal covenants, each revealing a different dimension of promise. Talira, the covenant of inheritance; Mashira, the covenant of compassion amid human weakness; and Maresa, the covenant of multiplication beyond expectation. Each covenant revealed a different way God fulfills promises, and one of them is rarely taught. Many assume the promise spoken over Elion was fulfilled through Neriel alone, but sacred promises often expand far beyond our assumptions. To be father of multitudes meant more than a single line. It meant a tapestry of destiny spreading across lands and generations. When Elion entered covenant with Maresa, His strength had already been renewed once beyond nature. What seemed impossible by human standards was simply another stage for divine power. And Maresa bore 5 sons. Before their names are spoken, understand this. These were not just names recorded for history. They were seeds of nations still shaping the world. Their names were Aaron, Tobal, Ymir, Kalmon, and Sethor. Each would become the root of a distinct people. Each would carry a fragment of Elion's spiritual inheritance into distant lands. These sons did not fade into obscurity. Their descendants settled across eastern trade corridors, desert crossroads, and mountain passes. One lineage through Ymir formed the Yemirite Confederation, traders who later sheltered the prophet Lothan during his exile from the northern kingdom. Another through Kalman controlled copper routes between the Red Highlands and the Sea of Reeds, shaping commerce for generations. These were not incidental figures. They were participants in the unfolding of sacred history. Yet the records tell us something striking. Before his death, Elion gathered Maresa's sons, blessed them with gifts, and sent them eastward, away from Nuriel's inheritance. This was not rejection. It was divine alignment. Each lineage had its own calling, each people their own role. Not all were chosen to carry the central covenant, but all were included in the larger design. Many ancient prophecies reference Eastern peoples, nations, rising from incense lands, desert tribes bearing ancient wisdom, caravans arriving at appointed times. Historians now recognize echoes of Maresa's descendants within those texts. What once seemed silent has begun to speak. Here is the deeper truth. Maresa represents a principle written into the fabric of divine action. God never wastes seasons. Not old age, not quiet years, not relationships that seem secondary. When the world believes the story is finished, heaven often begins its most unexpected chapters. Your life may feel overlooked. Your role may feel small. Your season may feel late. But Maresa's story declares something powerful. Purpose is not limited by visibility. Impact is not measured by attention. Legacy is not determined by how loudly history remembers your name. And now, here is the revelation that connects her story to us today. What you're about to hear may change how you see your own ordinary seasons. In every generation, there are Maresas, people whose faithfulness shapes futures they will never see. Lives that quietly influence generations without recognition. Relationships that seem ordinary but carry eternal consequence. The covenant of Elion and Maresa reminds us, God fulfills promises in layers, in timelines we do not control, through people we often overlook. So let this story leave you with one final truth. Your story is not over. Your influence may be greater than you imagine, and heaven may be writing chapters through your life that history will only understand much later. Because in God's economy, the quietest lives often carry the loudest legacy. Like Maresa, may your life be a fragrance released at dusk, rising quietly, spreading far, and bearing fruit long after the world stops watching.